Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for tuning in from wherever and however you are consuming this fantastic podcast today. My name is Caleb Talley, and I'm joined by my Startup Junkie co-hosts, Victoria Dickerson and Jeff Amerine. How's it going?
Great.
Well.
Glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Likewise. And we are joined by a special guest and friend of Startup Junkies, Zak Heald. Zak is with Intercut Productions and a lot of other entities that we'll go into, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the show, so I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, Zak, for starters, let's get into the Zak origin story. Take us in the Wayback Machine. How'd you get from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, I kind of ended up here by accident. I think it was like it's a hobby turned profession.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's that story, which is like I think the dream for most people, right? Is like take something you're passionate about and you like doing for fun, and then like find people that will pay you to do it. And that's how this started for me. Was I was in high school. Growing up, my dad owned a wrestling team, and wrestling was like my family did day in and day out, like 365 days a year. If we weren't in the wrestling room after school, I was like at gymnastics training for wrestling season.
So not jump from the top rope type wrestling.
Not jump from the top rope wrestling. No, not at all. No. But we moved to Arkansas. This was back in 2009. Moved to Arkansas, and Arkansas at the time was growing, right? It was, I like to think of 2009, the pre-Crystal Bridges, right? Like pre-2011 was a very different Northwest Arkansas than post-2011. Pre-2011 Northwest Arkansas was still in like, it's like we're growing and we're coming along. But like we got here and there was no wrestling teams, right? Or Bentonville had just started their wrestling team. And my whole plan growing up to that point was like, I'll go to school on a wrestling scholarship. I'll go get an MBA from like Iowa City, and I'll find a cubicle somewhere, right? Like that's what my dad had kind of like ingrained in me. That's what he did, right? And so that's what had kind of been ingrained in me. And moving to Arkansas had no wrestling team here. And so that was a very, put me in a weird place as like, what am I going to do with my time? This is the only thing I really know how to do. And so other than that, I enjoyed photography my whole life, owned a lot of cameras growing up, stole a lot of cameras from my grandfather and claimed them as mine afterwards. And so moving to Arkansas, not having a wrestling team, I ended up my parents were amazing when I moved to Arkansas and let me choose my school or choose where we lived, or choose the home we picked out based on the school district. And so we went and toured all the schools, which I can never give my parents enough credit for that. Like I've never heard of anyone allowing their students or their kids to go and tour the schools and they'll buy a home in the district they like. And so that was an amazing gift from my parents. And so we toured all the schools and I fell in love with Gravit. It was a school similar to the size that I had just come from. They had just built this brand new high school. The downside being they did not have a wrestling team. Bentonville did, Gravit did not. And I knew that like going to Gravit, I was going to be, sans wrestling team. And so, but went into that with the idea, like, I'll find something else. Like I'm going to have to find something else. Still kept wrestling alive. Like I coached over in Bentonville for a little while. Just like giving myself some way to like still do that activity. Bentonville tried really hard to get me to come and switch schools and to go wrestle for them. And I was just like, no, I really love my graduating class of like 150 people. Like this is what feels like home to me. I didn't want to jump into the 1,000 at the time, 1,600 people in their graduating class, and they were all in one school still. And so that was just like really intimidating to me. And so went to Gravit, had to find something else, stumbled into the theater department. And through the theater department, the theater teacher there, he was a freelance screenwriter, and got into helping him out during the summertime, like making summer movies. Like he took his summer breaks from school to like make little short films that he would submit to festivals. And I got involved with that, I think my sophomore or junior year, or sophomore year. Absolutely fell in love with it. Started investigating cameras for myself and buying gear. And then just started like doing things, whatever I could get my hands on to let me go film. Like it was like free church events. It was weddings when I could land those. Like it was literally anything and everything that someone would like. It was just, don't even pay me. Like just let me show up and do it for the experience. Some of the stuff that people got was really bad. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was doing.
You get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, 100%, right? Like, they knew they were hiring someone that had never done this professionally. I was never lying to anybody. I was like, I just want the experience. I don't know what I'm doing, but I would love to help. And did that for a while through high school, basically my junior year. The day I turned 16, actually. The day I turned 16 and got my driver's license, I drove myself to the courthouse in Bentonville and filed a DBA for Intercut Productions, and haven't really looked back since. Graduated high school the next year, and didn't really want to go to school at that point. I felt like I had something moving here in production. But my parents were dead set. They were like, you lose all support from us if you don't go to school. And
go to college or else. Right?
Go to college or else. It was like, go to college or else, like, don't come here looking for meals, right?
Right.
And so I was like, oh, okay, well, like, I really not sure I'm ready to, like, jump out completely. Like, I don't even think I can pay for my own insurance right now. Like, that probably wouldn't be a good thing. So went to school, went to film school for a year over at John Brown University. I felt like that was a close enough school that, like, I could still take care of clients that I was trying to build. I believed in Northwest Arkansas. I saw the opportunity that existed for production in Bentonville with the retail market and all here. And so that seemed like an obvious choice. So, like, I could stay in school, go to, or I could stay in film school while still, trying to grow a company here. Did that for a year. That summer, went back to my parents and was like, okay, this was fun, but this was really hard. Balancing work and balancing school feels like an impossible task, especially if we're growing at the rate I'm growing. And they basically were like, well, you're going to figure it out. And I was like, that was really not what I was hoping for from you guys. 3 weeks later, they came back to me. And I remember them telling me, I think we were on the boat at the time. And I remember them telling me, they were like, we were out at Beaver. And they're like, hey, we thought about what you had said the other day about, wanting to drop out. And we'll support that. Like, if you want to go, like, we'll basically spend what we were going to put towards your tuition next year. We'll spend that on the business next year. And that's your chance, right? Like, if you can make it work and you can grow it and you can get out of the house, awesome. So that's what I did. I spent the next, like, 6 or 8 months living in my parents' house. And then as soon as I could afford to move out, to prove that I could, right? Like, that was most of it. That was like, had to prove to my parents, like, this was going to work. As soon as I could afford to move out, I moved into downtown Bentonville. At the time, Bentonville was way cheaper than it is now.
Yep.
I had this little bitty house. And that was covered in ants all the time. Like, there was just ants everywhere. But I didn't care. Like, it was the dream for me. And so that was like the start of Intercut, dropping out. And I started hiring my friends. I met some of them at film school at JVU. Eventually convinced some of them to drop out, which was probably not a great thing for admissions there.
Their parents are still pissed.
Their parents, yeah. Certainly the admissions counselors there are not happy. I was not a great thing for their film program necessarily, but hired some of my buddies out of there, and we just went to work and saw it every day as, like, we're just, like, going to take every opportunity that comes our way and see what happens. And that's what we've done. So that dropped out in 2014 between 2013 and 2014 school year. And haven't looked back. So it's just been like a full on sprint since then. I've gotten to jump into some other different businesses and all that have kind of come out through different workings through Intercut. But Intercut's still the core of my day to day. We have 6 employees now, and get to serve clients both in Arkansas, but also all over the world.
And the best part of that story is you still have normal looking ears. We're not spending that much time on the mat, right?
Yes.
No cauliflower ears.
I have no cauliflower ear. That is amazing. 100%. None of my coaches growing up could say the same thing.
Right, so, looks like they've been,
my dad was so hardcore about ear protection in the wrestling room, outside of it, always like, you have to wear ear protection anytime you're on the mat, anytime you're engaging with somebody. It has to be, you had to have your headgear on. Which was definitely, like, at the time as a kid, I did not see the value in it.
Right.
Now looking back at, like, you see all these guys with these mangled ears, I'm like, oh, thank God my dad cared about my ears.
Although when you see guys like that, they're not going to get picked on, right?
No,
they're not going to get picked on. Because it's one of 2 options. Well, one of 3 options. They're either wrestlers, or they're cage fighters, or they're rugby players. Right. In which case, if you're going to pick a fight with them, it's lose, and a lose.
And a lose, yeah.
Yep.
No, and then I got none of those, right? Like, I look like this little twig that has no cauliflower ear to discourage you from messing with me. No, 100%. But no, I think that was the core of it. And entrepreneurship has always been in my family. My dad, while he didn't get to go start a business, my mom's very risk adverse. There were many a times growing up that we toured a campground one time. My dad's dream someday is to own a campground and marina.
Right.
It's a money losing situation. You probably should never buy a campground and marina. My dad knows that.
It's like buying a brewery.
It
really is.
Yeah. You do it for the love of it, right? You do it for the passion, for the relationships you get to form, for the community around the camp. Like, my dad loves that. And I remember, like, touring a campground and marina, and I was, like, so excited as a kid, like, we're going to buy this marina. And, like, we almost did. It was very close. My dad's always had that, like, desire to start his own thing. He works for Hewlett Packard right now. And even within Hewlett Packard, like, he wasn't at Hewlett Packard more than a year before he was like, hey guys, why don't we take what we were doing for Walmart and do it for all of retail? And like they let him start off his own division within HP. And so like he's always had that, like, even if my mom won't let him go and start his own thing, he's always been able to find people within organizations that have given him the ability to go and start, he was on the Sprint PCS development team when Sprint was starting out, with mobile phones. And so he's always had that like, energy to like go out and do his own thing and start his own thing. And he's always been very supportive of me, like wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to start my own businesses. And has always like, he's always been the one like, yes, yes, yes. My mom's like, wait, like, how's he going to pay for things? Like
it takes both kinds of people.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. My dad's always like, he's the one on the phone with me now that he's like, how are things going? Like, what, it's like always so excited. My mom's like, do you have food to eat? Like, are you okay?
Fantastic. So you started out, just doing it for fun and kind of doing it for free here and there. And now you are, kind of a premier, entity here in Northwest Arkansas. Speak to some of the notable projects that you're working on. I think it would be interesting to kind of just to compare where you were there to where you are now, just by virtue of like doing it versus like sitting in academia or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually going out and doing it. And what are you working on now?
Yeah. So when I started, I had the mentality that like I wasn't going to school. I knew that, and I knew that I was going to miss out on a lot of the opportunity, both the opportunity to network, the opportunity to meet people, the opportunity to build community that people were getting, that my fellows, my colleagues were getting in school. But I was also missing out on a lot of the education opportunities to learn on set, whether it be student films or not. But like there was things I was going to miss out on 100%. I knew that. And so I was pretty proactive right at the beginning of like, I want to go out and like job shadow. I want to apprentice under people. And I pursued those people right out of the bat, like right as soon as I dropped out. I remember when I was moved in with my parents, I realized this is one of the few times I'll ever have where I have no expenses. Like I'm just going to milk this right now. And so I pursued some people. One of them in particular, his name is Matthew Jepson, had a profound impact on my life and some of the early employees of Intercut, just providing us opportunity. At the time, he lives in Australia now and is doing some of the most beautiful video work out there. But at the time, he lived in Siloam, and I had been following his work for a long time. He was a really big commercial DP, director of photography in the commercial industry. And I one day realized that he lived 30 minutes from me. And I thought that was like absolutely like crazy. I never thought this guy even lived in the Midwest, right? Like I had put in my mind, pinned him on the coast. And I reached out to him one day. I was like, I just want to meet you. I'd love to work with you. Like, I will come work for free. Like, just let me come to set. And he took me up on it and started hiring me out. And like, I always came with the mentality, like, don't pay me, like, just let me come and work and help and learn. And every single time I walked away feeling like I had gained $1,000 worth of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was and every night he would ask me like, you're going to invoice me, right? And I was like, no, I'm not going to invoice you. And he's like, yes, you are. Figure out a number that you think you're worth and invoice me. And that was like, it did two things for me. One, it helped me realize like my work had value, even when I didn't feel like it did, which has, helped build the business long term. But he also just, poured into me and some of the other employees of just skill sets and mentalities to approach with projects and how to deal with clients and all of those things, when everything goes wrong on set, like what's really going wrong, right? And he just instilled so much there. And so I give him a lot of credit as far as like, taking me under his wing, providing a lot of, even when he didn't realize he was providing insight, like I was just constantly listening and watching and learning, right? And so going from him working, I remember him taking me to some of the most amazing jobs as I can think of like those were dream jobs. And then I'd like leave set with him and I would go work on like a $500 commercial, right? Or $1,000 wedding film. We sold a lot of weddings. Weddings were like what paid our bills for the first few years, right? Is like we realized early on that we could build the business if we just had cash flow. Like that was going to be the key to building the business was cash flow. And so we started pursuing those jobs that provided that cash flow. For us, right out of the gate, that was weddings. We were able to do a lot of them. We could do 20 a year, 30 a year. And while they weren't fun, they weren't a lot of, they weren't like our passion. They provided that cash flow for us that then during the week, we could afford to like spend some money to try to build up a client relationship. And we could build those client relationships without, or we could take on a job from Walmart or for somebody and didn't have to worry about trying to make a lot of money on that. It was like, if we just cover our costs on Monday, we can shoot for them and be good and prove that like, we want to be their vendor. And so, and that's what we did. We used that as a building block and slowly grew that. Through that, like, when I first started, it was working with super small brands that had, micro budgets of like $500 to $1,000 to work on things.
Kind of like us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, like everyone is there. And there are clients of mine today that like we'll spend $50,000 on a video, and then next month we'll spend $1,000. Right. There is always like every company, no matter the size, like as you grow, your needs for larger videos grow, absolutely. But like the need for that small, digestible, super quick content doesn't go away. Maybe it's like, for Tyson Foods, it could be, a commercial one day, but then the next thing, like it might literally just be an interview with, an employee to distribute to the rest of the company, right? Something that doesn't take a lot of time, it just has to get done, right? So, over the years, we've gotten to do a lot of cool things. These days, like I think the stuff that I'm like the most excited about and the things that bring me the most joy, I would say, are like I really love long form storytelling. We're getting more and more into like commissioned documentaries, and that is like that ignites all of the fun parts of my brain. And getting to it's challenging, it's emotional. Like there's a lot of pieces that go into those, and I really love that. And I love the payoff, like getting to watch people watch like a 30-minute or an hour-long piece at the end and like feel the emotions that like the characters felt throughout, or feel the emotions that we felt while making it. I get a lot of joy out of that and fulfillment. But and the other side of it is the aviation stuff. We're doing a lot in aviation now. I got my pilot's license during COVID. I used the very slow period of COVID as a chance. I was like, I'll never have time again like this. And so I used that time to get my pilot's license. It was a lifelong dream of mine, and did that. And through that, we've been able to build, we've been slowly building, aviation clients and building work in that area. And that's just another, one of those other passions that like I've always had was like flying and aviation, and getting to combine film and making a living while flying around. Like that is just, it's the next greatest, culmination of everything, I think. So.
You gotta stop making money doing stuff you enjoy.
I agree, right? Like sometimes I think it would be easier to make money at things I don't enjoy because I care less about them, right? Like I care too much sometimes, and that like we end up spending more money than we make sometimes because like we care about what we're doing, right? And we do that to a fault. Like, and I admit that. I admit that to my staff sometimes. I'm like, man, guys, we spent too much money on that project. Like we actually came out negative. Like we paid money to make that video for them, and that's my bad. But I get so excited about projects and making them as good as we can for a client. I even after 10 years doing this, I still sometimes haven't learned my lesson of like when we have to hit the brakes. But like, no, we can't do that within this budget because I just get so fired up about making things as good as we can. And that I hate when like it's like, oh, it's like for $500 we could solve this problem. It's like, well, let's just solve it. Like let's just do it, and like it'll be way better. And like it's our $500. We're gonna eat that, and like. But the client will never know, and they're going to love the final version because of it, right?
And they're going to come back to you.
And they're going to come back.
And they're going to come back.
We always play the long game. I say that around my office all the time. Like we are long game players here. Through all the businesses I've been a part of, and I'm still a part of, I'm always a player of like, let's not look towards what we make this year. Let's not look towards what we make in 2 years or 3 years. I'm a 5 or 10 year person. I always want to play the 5 or 10 year game of, I'm not looking at setting goals for next year. I'm looking at setting goals for 10 years. And because the industry does this, right? And I think setting goals for next year, like you can get very discouraged. And there's 1,000 reasons that something won't work, especially in production. Like you can have a project that feels 99% sold and is ready to go into production. And then tomorrow somebody gets cold feet, someone does something and the whole thing falls apart. That doesn't mean it's gone. It just means like give it 24 months. Someone else is going to pick it up and like, boom, back to the races you go. And so I've just kind of learned like set long-term goals, keep people really happy, provide as much value as you can. And it always comes back around.
Yeah, Zach, it seems like you brought such energy to all this, and you're kind of on the leading edge of many different things, and you've got some fantastic clients. We're all hearing about the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning on all aspects of life. What's your take on that? What's it going to do to your business?
I'm so excited about AI. We probably spend 10 hours a week in the office, maybe not that much, 5 to 10 hours a week, talking about AI, playing with AI, experimenting with it. There are some members of my team that are using it in every single day in some form.
How are they using it? How are they using it?
All parts of our business are using it. So, like I'll start with one like I think of because we're using it every day for this is like post-production. there are so many AI tools now. Things of like, I had a conversation yesterday with a television network producer that they were complaining about, somebody mowing the grass in the background of some audio. And I was like, I don't even think about that anymore. It's literally been so long since I've thought about a year, since I've thought about what is in the background audio track. Most of the time, AI removes it. Like there's software out there now that like Adobe's working on, that there's a company called Runway is doing some incredible things that you can literally plug your audio track in. I think Adobe's is called Adobe Podcast. And, but we use it for lots of things other than podcast audio. We've saved some really high dollar projects that like, for whatever reason, something happened to something during shooting, whatever, right? And like
Train,
you end up
dog barking,
whatever
plane.
it is. And like air conditioner kicks on in a building, in a warehouse that you can't control the air conditioner for. Like there's always 1,000 variables. Or like we did a lot of projects where we're working with influencers where like we might be shooting a piece for a retailer, and you plug in, they might send us like, we're going to shoot a big chunk of this production, right? But then there's also going to be influencers that are contributing to the production from all over the country, and they're shooting their stuff on iPhones, maybe 20 feet away from the camera, and like we're just expected to make it all look and sound beautiful. And that's where like all these AI tools are coming in of like, we can feed that horrible audio from someone talking 20 feet away from the camera into AI and be like, hey, I need you to analyze this voice, clean it up, and make it sound like they're talking into a microphone.
Nice.
Cool.
And it's amazing.
That's so cool.
Also in post-production, like there's things for asset creation of like just a starting place. I think that's the number one thing I keep ingraining with AI is that use it as a starting place. It's not a finish line all the time. It's a time saver. It's a starting place. Like, okay, I need a graphic of this happening with this, right? And like through AI, you can get to a starting place. You might have to modify, you might have to adjust, you might have to add to, but it at least starts the process. I think of like writer's block. It's something I suffer from horribly. It's like I'll sit down to write a script for something and I'll just stare at the page for 10 hours. AI has eliminated that from me. Like I can feed it a creative brief for a project.
Here's what I'm thinking.
Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I want to do. And I was like, just give me a first draft of the script, right? And like it will hammer out a first draft. And it's by no means ready for me to take to the client, but it is a place that I can then go, oh, yes, okay, that's how I want to set this up. And like now I go in and we make our changes. Wow. So like from the beginning of a project through the end of the project, we're finding ways to weave it in. Even our project management now is like I'm weaving it into that. I've paid for we bought Notion AI and integrated AI into Notion. And the ability for us to like just the time saving, like I can hop into Notion and be like, hey, create a graph on this data right here. And like it pumps out a graph. And like now I have a graph to show in the next meeting about some data we just pulled off of analytics or whatever, right? That's and like cool. It just speeds up a lot. So I'm excited about it. I do see like there are a lot of people out there that are afraid like, oh, my job's going away. And like there are some jobs that you're going to need to learn to embrace AI now.
Yeah.
If you want to have a job in the future, right? If you are a copywriter, you need to learn to use AI today if you want to have a job in 5 years.
Sure.
If you're a website designer, you should probably be learning AI today because AI is going to take you out of a job. Not entirely, but like for all the $5,000 to $20,000 websites you're doing right now, those jobs are going to go away because people are only going to be paying for full Shopify integration, shoppable sites, interactive sites, things that are not just a landing page, which like 90% of websites on the internet are landing pages.
The interesting thing about that people forget is in the developed world, the birth rate is less than 2, which means that we're actually losing population. And so for people to stay productive, they need these kind of tools. Because the reason why the participation rate is so low is there's people who are leaving the workforce, people my age, boomers, and there's not the young people to replace us. So what are you going to do? You have to have these kind of tools. So I actually think it's going to be a force multiplier, and it's so encouraging.
And it's going
to hear what you're talking about.
It's going to increase productivity across the country.
Exactly.
Right. Like your GDP will go up because of AI.
It should. Right. It's a time saver.
It should allow humans to spend their complex mind, brain, energy on complex tasks that can't be dueled out to computers, right? AI should fill a lot of the monotonous stuff, right? Is it going to require us to like change our perception of what work is and what we require of people when they go to work? Yes, like we're going to require humans to do the creative piece, right?
You're still
not the
gonna be
data
editors,
entry.
you know?
What's the right
Yeah.
question? What's the right prompt versus all the content?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? And so I think like there is going to be a shift over the next 5 to 10 years of those data entry, data-driven positions are going to slowly fall away. And like we're going to be leaning more on humans to be creative, to be pumping ideas into AI, to know what to type into the prompt, to get what you're looking for, all of that. But AI in general is amazing. I think it's very exciting. One of the things we're talking about in the office is like how you can take knowledge. So like one company-wide knowledge of like we're looking at building things into our own infrastructure where every single email that Zach gets, that our editors get, that meeting notes from a conference call, from a Zoom meeting, all of that gets fed into a database that is searchable by all of our employees. So if they want to go, hey, what did Brett say to Zach in that meeting last week about when this video is due? They just type that into the prompt and it says, oh, well, last week in our meeting, Jeff told you that it's due, that he wants that video due on Thursday the 20th, right?
Super advanced search.
Super advanced search. Yeah. But then think about taking that into like user manuals. Think about the wikis that you hit on a regular basis looking for parts or looking for how to do something in a piece of software. If all of that has been integrated into an AI chat GPT type of solution, you could literally just type in, hey, how do I get this? What does this error light mean on my dashboard? And it goes through and it goes, oh, and it pulls it and goes, and not just like pulls the page where it's like, this is what it's like, this is the page where you're going to find things about your warning lights, right? But it goes, well, this is what that light means. This is what could be causing it. And then it can ask you related questions. How old is the machine? What have you serviced her? Like, and then it starts to be able to, pull out. It's like talking to a service tech, right? It's like the need for a customer service person to sit on the phone and like answer the questions on their computer about what they're asking you goes away. AI is that person, right?
I kind of keep comparing it to Google and how when that was new in my research world of junior high, I had to go to the library and find the books and check it out. And my professor would always say, you can't use Google for this research project. You have to go to the library. But we all thought that Google was going to be this crazy invention. And it's really kind of what AI is doing, that you can find the same information, but it's just cutting through those steps to make it just a little bit faster.
Yeah. I think the key to AI in the future is going to be how do we safeguard it from being wrong? It's very confidently wrong right now. And I think that's the very dangerous thing is like confidence when you're wrong can be dangerous, right? And like it can lead you astray very easily if you don't have the wherewithal to be like, nope, that's wrong. Like I can see through that. But the more people understand AI, the more they use it, the better they understand how it comes up with its answers, the more powerful it will become for people. Using it as this magic box where you type things in, like that's cool for the first couple of months. But like I encourage people to like dig in. How are they training it? How is it learning? And how does it learn? So that then it starts really spinning your wheels. Like, what can I feed it, right? Like, what can I do to use this technology? Maybe it's to start a new business, right? Like, there's so many businesses out there that are yet to be started on the backbone of AI.
Yeah, no doubt.
It just takes playing with it. Once you understand how it's being taught, all that, like the ideas will come to you of like, how can I use this to better my business or to start a new business altogether?
How to inform it to better fit what you need it for. And then like what you're talking about, like company-wide, like those conversations, my mind immediately went to not just like looking for a conversation, but like the onboarding process of a new employee, of somebody brought onto the team where it's like, if there are revolving doors within companies, you don't have to really focus on really onboarding somebody. It's like, okay, well, if you have questions about these processes that may take 3 months for somebody to get comfortable with, they could just go like, how did Dave do this? And it's like bada bing, bada boom.
That's I think where we're going. I think people are going to see that being integrated into their lives at work and won't really connect the dots that it's AI that's doing that for them. But that's going to happen so fast. Like there are people working very hard to make that happen on a large scale level for large corporations that where the data, so much of your success as a company these days is about how much data is shared amongst your employees, right? If everyone's operating in silos, you get very slow and clunky. The companies that have really good communication and good databases of data that's shared amongst employees where everyone has access to things and knows what's going on projects are going to be the most successful. And I think AI is going to enable a huge piece of that.
And when you're siloed like that, when there is turnover, it's almost like catastrophic because it's like, I don't know what he was doing, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So outside of AI, which is, we could talk about that
All day.
But talk to us a little bit about, so y'all have got the Farmhouse Studios. We've shot some content. We've had some events out there. We've done some really cool stuff. I was telling Victoria earlier how we did a Startup Stories out there, and you had the Camaro out there with the fog machine, just really showing out, and it worked out. It's fantastic. Talk to us about how that came to be, and as I understand, it's the largest soundstage in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah. So the studio, we actually just recently rebranded. It's now Bentonville Studios.
Okay.
We were Red Barn Farm Studios was originally the name. We still on the door. It says Farm Studio. It says Bentonville Studios at the farm. Now, is what
it's still in Hiwassee.
It's still in Hiwassee. Yeah, it's in Hiwassee. It's on the farm.
Like the Anaheim Angels of Los Angeles or whatever.
Our cows are the Angels. So the Bentonville Studios started out of a relationship with me and a company called Kickstart Entertainment. We met during the first year of Bentonville Film Festival in 2015, producing content at the time. We were producing some stuff for Walmart. And throughout that first year working together at the festival, the owner of Kickstart Entertainment, his name's Jason Netter. He's from Los Angeles, was involved in came to Bentonville. He had done some dealing. He had made some movies with Walmart in the past. And so when the film festival started, he had kind of gotten involved. It's just more of a cheerleader than anything in the first year, but then kind of got drugged in to make this content with me. And we just really enjoyed working together, really enjoyed the relationship. And both of us saw a similar perspective of what Arkansas could be when it comes to production. We both saw that Arkansas was on a path. We had amazing diverse geography. Arkansas had passed some pretty competitive tax rebates or incentives for film in Arkansas. And it just seemed like the one thing Arkansas was missing to allow production to thrive here was some infrastructure. And being involved with the Bentonville Film Festival, the mission for the festival has always been to embrace film in Northwest Arkansas, to give it a platform, but then also to hopefully invest back into the filmmakers that are coming and bringing their films to showcase and getting them to shoot their next project here in Arkansas and growing the industry through that. One of the big hurdles we saw in doing that was that that's really hard to convince these filmmakers that come from Los Angeles or Georgia or wherever, and be like, hey, your next movie, you should shoot here. And they're like, where? Right? And it's like, well, we're working on that. So that was what we kind of came. It was like, okay, the next big step we have to build infrastructure, right? Like we've got good rebates. Arkansas crew was on the rise. We really just need an infrastructure, need some home base for these film projects. And so him and I, sat down after the year one of the festival and dreamed up what does an Arkansas studio look like. And before I knew it, the next week, I was out meeting with realtors, driving around, looking at places. And it over the course of the next 8 months had kind of fought over a bunch of different spots, hadn't really nailed one. And one day we found this place out in Hiwassee, and we were all like, okay, I think this is it. This feels like a good spot. It was in the Gravette School District. It allowed us to put our tax dollars back into my alma mater, which I really cared about. I love Bentonville, but Bentonville doesn't need my tax money. They're doing fine. And then we'll be doing fine. And so I felt like if we could pinpoint where we were going to put tax dollars, Gravette felt like a place that felt like the most rewarding for me personally to be investing in. And so this building just seemed like the right one. We were like, okay, well, no one else is going to want this building. So let's just make a plan, and then we'll make a purchase, and we'll do it. And all of a sudden, a week later after that, my real estate agent calls me and she's like, hey, so I'm on my way over to the building. Someone's really interested in it. If you guys want it, I'm going to need an offer by 8 p.m. tonight. And I was like, oh no. So we rushed and we put an offer in. We were able to get the building. And that kind of launched Bentonville Studios. Or I say that. It launched an empty space that we then had to figure out what to do with. I went and toured all of my favorite studios across the country, kind of picking out what was the best, what was going to work the best for us. The big challenge is what does Arkansas need versus what does Arkansas want? Arkansas wants a lot of things. Arkansas needs a lot less than that. And one of the big things was I can't build a studio that's so expensive to rent that it negates the reason you came to shoot in Arkansas in the first place. And so that was that's if you could take one thing away when you visit the Farm Studios or we visit Bentonville Studios today is is this space is a culmination of what we believe Arkansas needs, not what Arkansas wants. There's a lot of things I would do to make the space better. But that being said, there's also, as I do those things, it gets more expensive to rent, right? And so our thought was we're going to build stage one. That's what we call the one out there is stage one. We have plans for a second stage out behind that one that is about 2.5 times as big and makes a lot of improvements on the one we have now to take on bigger and bigger projects as Arkansas brings those in. And so our biggest thing right now is like we want to provide that base infrastructure, provide a place that productions can call home, whether they shoot in our studio, whether they just use it for offices and for building sets and all that kind of stuff. Regardless, we just want it to be a home base, a place that productions can, feel like they can leave everything in at night, lock it up. It's under security systems, right? Like it is their place. So there are films that come into Arkansas that use it as a warehouse. Like it truly becomes a giant art warehouse where there's costumes and props being built and all this stuff happening in there. And there are other days where like it's production happening in there, right? The sets come in and people are in there, they're using hair and makeup, like the whole building's under use. And so that was like the goal for that building. And our goal is that as it grows and as Arkansas's film industry grows, we've got the property, we'll just continue to expand on that. And continue to kind of fulfill the needs of Arkansas as the needs grow.
And you definitely put it in a place where you can grow, right there in that spot.
Right. Yeah. That was a huge piece as well. Like everyone's like, why did you do downtown Bentonville? And I was like, well, how do I get semi trucks in? Right. Like a huge part of production involves a lot of semi trucks, and I need a place to park a bunch of semi trucks. And you got to get them through and not be stuck in a jackknife situation downtown. And so, it was a question we got a lot when we first opened. I was like, why all the way out here? And I was like, find me a piece of property that allows, like I have a city that wants to help. That's the other great thing. I cannot praise Gravitt enough. They go above and beyond all the time to make sure that like production feels wanted in there. Our neighbors are amazing. Like Arkansas is an amazing place to shoot. We don't have to pay off people to get them to stop mowing their grass or something, like I've been in Montana before and like I had to pay somebody a pack of beer to get them to like stop mowing for an hour. And I was like, here, drink a couple beers. And we'll like, after an hour, you guys go back to mowing. And like that, Arkansas is like just so friendly to production. And that's what, for us has really allowed for production to work here and continues to make an incentivizing thing for productions. It's like, look, Arkansas is so friendly. Everyone wants movies to be shot here. Everyone's not mad when they see a film crew. You go to LA and everyone like, see a film crew. It's like, oh, everyone's all angry. And like here, everyone's so excited about that and excited that we're showing off the region and excited that, we're building it into stories. And that's really cool. I love going to the theater or going and seeing things that were shot here and be like, oh, look, like it's all the little locations. Sometimes you don't even realize like those are in your backyard because we frame them up so differently. But the stuff that does get seen, or like, there's some movies that like have shown off Crystal Bridges and it's like, wow, like it's cool to see those locations that we're in every day up on the big screen, in a way that you're depicted it as not an art museum or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I remember when they were shooting Walk the Line, that Joaquin Phoenix, Johnny Cash story, they filmed several scenes in my hometown of Forest City. And so they had all the trailers and the tractor, the actors' trailers and the tractor trailers all in the movie theater parking lot. And it became like, while they were there for a month, it became like a tourist, everybody around just wanted to go see. They wanted to go stand out and look or drive by or like, look, will we see Reese Witherspoon? That type of thing. So it's like everybody just kind of gathers around it. And then to that point, it's like, I know that tree. Like, I've seen that tree. It was like, I know that hotel, that sort of thing. So,
a lot of places you have to hire production on film sets to protect the gear. In Arkansas, we hire security on film sets to like keep people from just like bombarding the set with like photos, right? It's like, just keep everybody 300 yards away, right? Like, because everyone's just so interested and they're excited about production. They're excited about seeing a film happen in their hometown, which they should be. Like, it's an exciting thing. And a lot of people don't realize that like, not only are films exciting to watch, but like they bring an enormous amount of economic development dollars into Northwest Arkansas. Every time you see a film here, it's pretty safe to assume at least 80, if not 90 to 95% of the money being spent on that movie are being spent right here in Arkansas. It's going to local vendors. It's going to people that are driving buses. It's going to people that are providing food, to caterers, to tent rental companies, you name it. It's going to local crew members, right? And local cast, local extras. Every time you see a project shooting in Arkansas, you can point to that and say, oh my gosh, look, like there is $1 million that just got poured into Northwest Arkansas in a matter of 20 or 30 days. And I think that's the rewarding part of what we're doing at Bentonville Studios. is we're pumping money in. Like we're out there constantly going, hey, come shoot your movie here. Come shoot your movie in Arkansas. Arkansas's open and ready for business. And in turn, we're able to bring more and more of those bigger and bigger projects. And, up until now, we've seen a lot of like the projects just keep getting bigger. This year, we've got projects on the table for the studio that honestly will be some of the biggest projects Arkansas has ever shot, outside of like True Detective, right?
That's exciting.
Don't count it as a series. They spent 120 days or something. But building on each year, I think we're going to continue to see bigger and bigger projects come to Arkansas, and in turn, like that's just pumping money down into the ecosystem or into the economy here locally.
And that's why AEDC has a whole division for supporting that. I'm assuming Chris Crane and his crew.
Yep, Chris Crane, the Film Commission. Arkansas has a 20 and 30%. Actually, we just bumped it up. It's a 25% rebate now as a base. It used to be 20. Last month, they bumped it to 25, which is fantastic. What that means is 25% of all of the money spent on a production in Arkansas goes back to the filmmaker. So it's a huge incentive. So if I pay Brett $100,000 to work on my movie, the state will pay me $25,000 back in cash. That's amazing, right? Paid him 100, I got 25 back. Now I can spend that on you, right? And like maybe your bill was 25,000, I spent 25,000 on you, and I get 25% of that back, right? And so it allows awesome. Money to stretch a lot further in a production. If you think of on $1 million movie, I really only need $750,000 to go into production, knowing that like at the end of the movie, I'm going to get that rebate back and can pay off whatever debt I've incurred making that $1 million movie, right?
Very compelling.
And that's films travel the country looking for that. And actually for you guys, it would actually be 30. You're an Arkansas resident. So Arkansas residents get 30%. It's 25% on goods and services, 30% on resident labor. So like that's a very competitive incentive that can also be transferred into a tax credit that is transferable as well and sellable. So if I didn't want the cash back from the state and wanted to take on that liability, the cash liability, I could then transfer that into a tax credit and sell it. Brett, you've got a bunch of taxes due this year. Here's a tax credit for $250,000 off your taxes or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's a really cool system that Arkansas put together. It's very competitive. We're working to make it even more competitive. The one thing we're missing right now is a film fund. Right now, all of our film incentives are paid out through governor discretionary funding, which limits our ability to promise big studios that money's going to be there next year. They don't want to like take production out of another state and reinvest into Arkansas, not knowing what next year looks like in Arkansas. And so that's like the missing piece right now is how can we, is securing a film. We're working hard to do that, but it's securing a film fund at the state level that guarantees outside producers saying, hey, come make a movie in Arkansas. We're guaranteed we're going to spend, we have this money in the bank. It's going to films. Come and apply for it. Right now, it's every time a film applies, we go to the governor says yes or no, and then the money gets allocated. Where we're looking to just like basically pre-allocate a sum of money. I think Oklahoma does $30 million a year.
It's a good idea.
And is that a differentiator between like Arkansas and say Georgia, where there's so much film?
It is
production?
The key differentiator is a funded rebate, is what we call it. It's bankable is really what it is. That's really a differentiator here. Is what by being governor discretionary funded. Every time a film goes through the film rebate process. They get their little thing back from the Chris Crane or from the state that says you've been approved for the film rebate. That piece of paper, since there is no money sitting in a bank account called film fund, is not bankable. I have to go find private equity that will give me that money.
And you get cents on the dollar, right? I mean, it won't be dollar for dollar. It'll be like 85 or 90 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. Yeah. Where in bankable states, in Oklahoma, in Georgia, that money is a bankable note, which I can then go to the bank and say, I've got this, and it's guaranteed by the state as long as I finish this project. And so therefore, the bank basically will give me a 1-to-1 on that money.
Nice.
So that's the missing piece here. I think we're getting very close. We've been working pretty hard this year to get there. I think we're making moves. It's been a long process over the last 5 or 6 years to kind of convince everybody in Little Rock that like this is what's missing. Last month, we got it bumped from 20 to 25%. That's an amazing little incentive that has happened that just kind of helps push us above Oklahoma. That's why I keep pushing. Like, let's just be better than our neighbors, right? Like, we don't have to beat everybody in the country. Just be better than like if they just go next door,
right?
And so if we can just be better than our next door neighbors, we'll at least scoop up a big chunk of their production, which honestly, 50% of what Oklahoma shoots a year would keep Arkansas busy for quite a while.
Wow. When you think about that movie Minari that was about Northwest Arkansas, like it was set in Northwest Arkansas, but shot 30 minutes away in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So
and that's because of the film rebate, right? Oklahoma offered a very competitive one. Arkansas has been working to, be more competitive. And they basically have gotten there when it comes to percentage points. It's now just a matter of like, how is it funded?
It's like, how do we make East Oklahoma look like Northwest Arkansas to save some money?
100%. Yeah. So, but that's what the studio does. Like it provides infrastructure for people or for projects. We do a lot of commercial work in there. Obviously Intercut uses it for some of our own work. But then, this week there was, I can't say who, but television networks in there shooting.
Tell us.
She's like so mean about it every time she's in there.
Okay.
That's the producer. Has nothing to do with the show. You'll never guess it. I can guarantee it. I'll tell you off camera later. Everyone on the
It'll
podcast.
be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. Everyone can scroll down. You'll see. No, so like it gets used all the time for like all different kinds of things, whether it be interviews, whether it be full on set builds to do crazy things. We've pulled helicopters in there. We've pulled cars in there. We've got a 50-foot by 90-foot cyc wall, which allows us to put it. I mean, everything from if you want to shoot, a JB Hunt truck front to back, right? Like you can put the whole thing on the studio wall and shoot the whole thing front to back. A 50-foot semi. So that was kind of our intention. Was we wanted to build a space that no matter what your need was when it came to Northwest Arkansas, we kind of looked around. Okay, we got JB Hunt, you've got Tyson, you've got Walmart. And all the preliminary, all the services around those, the vendors around those, how can we build a space that when it's not being put to work on big projects can be a resource for all those smaller entities, or say smaller entities, the smaller rentals, right? Walmart doesn't come in for 4 weeks at a time. Generally, it's a day or two, So that's kind of the mold that we've taken there.
Great.
What comes next? You've got a bunch of other businesses you're working on too. Any you want to talk about?
So I have a YouTube show that I'm really passionate about. And I'm just going to tell people about it. And if you want to go watch it, you can. It's called Duzit. One of my good friends, he just retired from the Air Force. He was the number 2 Thunderbird. He flew airplane number 2 in the Thunderbirds.
Okay.
Before that, he flew F-15s in England and Japan. Just one amazing aviator, and just one of the best people you'll ever come in contact with. Every one of my friends that I've introduced to him, I'll say the same thing. They're always like, wow, like he's like an amazing human being to be around. Like he's so humble. You would never we've been in meetings with people that have known him for weeks and they'll never even know he's a Thunderbird. And like one day it'll come in conversation. And they're like, wait a second, what? Anyway, we've started a YouTube show together called Duzit. And we travel the country looking for people that are doing really cool things in aviation. We basically say there's 3 things that we're looking for: people that are being innovative, mostly in general aviation. We cover all of aviation, but we really have a passion for general aviation. And innovation is a thing we have not seen in general aviation. We're still flying engines that were built in a brand new airplane today, rolling off the line, has an engine built in the 50s or designed and built in the 50s. Yeah. There's just no innovation happening in general aviation. So we're looking for innovation. We're looking for people that are improving safety in aviation. And then lastly, accessibility. And so we spend quite a bit of time every year just looking for those people, going and telling their stories. We partner with really amazing brands and just overall amazing people. It's connected us to some of the most amazing people across the country that have a passion for aviation, that are doing this out of the love. Against popular belief, there is not a lot of money in aviation, especially in general aviation. Yeah. Like there's a lot of money in corporate commercial aviation. But in general aviation, it's a lot of, everyday Joes, that have saved up some money to be able to afford, a 40 or 50 or maybe $100,000 aircraft, and they spend all of their time and energy, upkeeping it. And so there's not a lot of money in that GA, and a lot of these people that are doing the innovation, that are improving things for the country or for the industry as a whole, are doing it out of the passion and the love of it. Mm-hmm. And so we love telling their stories and elevating them, and helping them to grow their brands, get visibility, all of that. We see that as being really important. General aviation, I think, without action is on a downward spiral right now. Sure. Between insurance costs and the cost of ownership of an airplane just keeps skyrocketing. Yeah. We see it as it's really important today. Aviation, general aviation is a freedom, is a privilege that we have in the United States. It's really unique. There's no other country in the world that has the general aviation privileges and laws that we do. There's almost no country in the world, maybe besides Australia, in the US, that I can go and land my airplane in a grass field anywhere, basically, right? I want to camp there on federal land. Go and land there and camp on federal. Like that's allowed, and that can't be said about most places in the world. And so I see it as really important to protect that and to do everything we can to try to save that industry. Because without action today, like we will see GA just slowly die off and dissolve.
And is the show already out? Are you already shooting?
It is, yes. We've already been releasing episodes. We launched basically this time last year. Primarily, we first started on Instagram. We've got a pretty big following there, about 250,000 followers there. Nice. And YouTube's been kind of slowly following behind. So if you look it up, it's Duzit on YouTube, and same thing on Instagram. Trevor's Instagram is Dozen Aldridge. But you'll find it on the Duzit page. Yeah. But yeah, I encourage you, if you have any interest in aviation, we try to keep things at a level where like most content can be enjoyed by both someone with no airplane knowledge, no interest in aviation really, but also someone who has quite a bit, right? And some episodes are more targeted to different people in that way, but we try to make everything very approachable. Super informative and educational, but not so much that like it's going over your head. Cause like it's easy for a fighter pilot to talk about G-forces that go way over my head. But he does a great job of like bringing it down. None of my editors in the office are pilots. And I think we use that as a really good litmus test. So like if they don't understand it when they're editing it, like how is Caleb going to understand it? Right. And so like, that's always been our philosophy is like, we want to make sure that we bring it to a level that everyone can understand. And it inspires people to like, whoa, like that's really cool. Maybe you don't want to be a pilot, but it inspires you to be like, whoa, I didn't know that about airplanes. Like, I want to go learn about aircraft engines, or I want to go become an engineer and work on airplanes. Like, the world needs more of that. And so that's what the show is about, is just inspiring people to get into aviation, whether it be pilot, whether you want to be an aircraft mechanic, whether you want to be an aerospace engineer. We try to hit on all of those things and bring cool stories to light. So
that's cool.
And that's Duzit.
Dozen Duzit.
Okay,
Duzit. Yeah. It's an argument.
It'll be in the show notes, but
it's an argument in our office
for
of like,
those
should
that
it be
don't scroll
spelled
down,
phonetically or should it be spelled like the right way to spell Duzit? And I really like phonetics. Like I love like Hooked on Phonics was my thing as a kid. Like does it? Yeah, it makes sense to me. I love it. But some people in the office have claimed that it makes it hard to find. But I really love the Duzit. So it's Dozen Duzit. His call sign was Dozen in the military. Okay. So that's where we got the Dozen.
I know if there's like a Dirty Dozen like callback. Zach, one way we like to land the plane on the podcast is to ask our guests to go back in their Wayback Machine. Whether that's 10 years ago, whether it's before, you launched Intercut, young guy, but you've been doing this for a while. And with all the accumulated knowledge that you have now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I thought about this on the way over here, thinking, this is how you guys.
You knew this one was coming.
I knew this one was coming, and I still feel unprepared for it. This is tough. So there's one thing that I when I speak to high schoolers all the time, which I like to think of myself of like when I speak to high schoolers, I'm speaking to my younger self because I was like always interested in people that came and spoke. And one thing I like to talk about is like the power of ask. And then I got reminded of this the other day. I was in Lakeland, Florida at an aviation event. And one guy who's very important to me and to Trevor, to Dozen, that had introduced us to one of our biggest brand partnerships to date. He said something to me that I was like, you're not going to believe that. But I've had that typed out and written on on a label maker. And I label printed it and put it on my keyboard above my trackpad. And he said it out loud. And I was like, you just wouldn't believe that. I've gave entire high school talks about this one phrase, and it's the power of ask. If I could go back to high school and tell young Zach one thing, is like, just ask. There are so many people in the world that want others to succeed, that want to see you succeed, and have no problem providing the assistance or the help that you need to get there, providing the hand up, whether it be a piece of advice, whether it's a coffee with you and just talking, whatever it is, just ask for it. Doesn't mean you're going to get an answer the first time. You may have to ask 20 times. But no one is ever going to blacklist you from their life for asking for something, especially if you're not asking for anything personal, right? It's like, hey, I just want to have coffee, or hey, I would love to come help on that production, or hey, I would love the opportunity to go do X with you the next time you go. The moment that clicked for me, I remember like I was way too old at that point. I was like 24 when I think it finally like really implanted itself in me, was like, just ask for people, just ask things, just ask. If you need it, just ask. Don't try to like come up with a reason why, like just ask. And like people, especially in Northwest Arkansas, it's the startup junkie mentality, right? It's like, we have this amazing culture here that no one's out to get the other person. We're not competitive. If you go and ask anyone in my office, like, we're not a competitive company. We don't go out and try to steal people's clients. Like, we have this mentality, like, we're here as a community. We all the boats rise when the tide rises in Northwest Arkansas. There will always be enough work for everybody. If you just ask people what you need, they almost always will do their best to deliver on that. And so that's what I think my number one takeaway is. The other thing when it comes to growing a business is hire slow and fire fast. I hear that said all the time. And I think that's the advice I give to young people as well, is like, as you're growing a company, you will find people that fit really well within the organization, and you will find people that don't. And when you find people that don't, get them out. Be quick to get rid of those people, because they can become toxic in the environment and hurt the company very quickly. We've had experiences within Intercut where, like, you let someone go that was a toxic piece of the culture. And the moment that person walks out the door, everyone in the office, you like felt the weight leave the office, and like everyone starts talking to each other again. It was like, where is this company culture been the last 6 months, right? And it was like, it was being suppressed and drained out by this one person, right? And so I think that was another big thing, is like, when we realize, like, when you find people that aren't working in the culture, you have to move them out. And move on. Like, it's not the end of the world. It sucks. It might be painful in the day or the week. I'm a really nice person, and I like have a hard time bringing that, like, being that bad guy. But it is essential to growing the company.
Where can our audience find out more about Intercut or any of your other ventures? What's the best way for them to find out? Yeah. So, the very best way for Intercut is to go to the website. It's intercut.productions or intercutproductions.com. Both take you there. But intercut.productions, INTERCUT. And then also on Instagram, all the same, Intercut Productions. And then myself, Zak Heald, ZAKHEALD on Instagram. I post a lot of my life on there, a lot of the behind the scenes, a lot of the travels and things like that we're doing for work. Instagram is really the kind of place where I post a lot of that stuff. And so they can follow along there. And on my Instagram, there's links to all the various stuff that I'm involved in. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.